welcome to a brand new episode of the Blooming Valley Garden Club podcast. I'm your host, Justine, and I am excited to say that we are doing something a little bit different. Don't worry, dear listeners, we're still going to touch on gardening and gardening adjacent things because truly, what is gardening without water? We have our fantastic co-host here today, Bethany, whom some of you know, but for those of you who are not in the know, Bethany is also involved with another organization called Protect Our Water Source. For those of you who would like to be looped in, fear not, we're going to cover it all on the podcast to make sure you are all up to date of what is going on in this particular part of southern Quebec in terms of a commercial water bottling plant. Bethany, we are here today and we are ready to talk about all things water in our beloved region. How you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing really well, and I'm feeling very excited and positive about this great news that's come down the pike just recently.
Let's get into it. What is the hot news of the day?
So, a week ago today, last Friday, June 5th, our watershed organization, the OBV Scabrique, that looks at the watershed of the River Chateauguay, came out with an open letter to the Premier of Quebec, Christine Fréchette, and the Environment Minister, Pascal Derry. And what this letter asks for, formally, is that they will hold, the province of Quebec will hold what's called a BAPE, Bureau des Audiences Publiques en Environnement. And what that means essentially is that there will be a 4-month-long process in which the government will hear from actors all across the playing field in terms of water protection, including the watershed organization itself, other environmental groups, and then everyday Joes and people like, you or I could go up and talk to the board of the BAP and bring our concerns forward. And the fact is that we're really facing water shortages in this Montérégie West area for many different reasons, and there are many different factors of why this is happening. And so what we want is for the government to take stock of what's really going on, to do some more profound study of the issue, and then to propose some solutions. So we don't know yet if there will be the BAP, but what's really exciting is that this news has been everywhere. It's been splashed all over the television. It's been splashed all over the radio, and it's online. So we will be linking for sure to those articles and some little TV bits that you can take a look at, see for yourself what's going on.
Direct democracy, directly interacting with the levers of power, one might say.
Exactly.
So for listeners who are not in the loop in terms of the water crisis here down in our particular pocket of Quebec, can you give us just kind of a brief overview of what are some concerns that we're facing in terms of the water shortage around here?
Right. So our area of Quebec is in the very southernmost and westernmost little tip of Quebec. It is quite hot here in the summers. People might not think hot summer when they think of Quebec, but in fact, we can get some pretty hot temperatures and some pretty droughty conditions. Especially last year, it was very, very bad. And this also happens to be the breadbasket of Quebec. So it's very, very much an agricultural region. There isn't much else in terms of like land in Quebec that will be able to support that kind of agriculture, just due to the fact that here we have really fertile soil. We have the longest growing seasons as well of anywhere in Quebec. So it's essential that we keep this area if we want to have food that's grown locally. And we do. I think all of us know that is a net benefit for everyone. However, agriculture does mean that a lot of water is required, right? We have to water our crops, we have to water our gardens, and especially when it gets real droughty, we have to water even more. So I would say, most of the water that's used out here would be probably from agriculture, but we also have municipalities that are growing This area is attracting a lot of new residents, and it's fantastic to see the diversity that's coming into this area. I mean, Huntingdon used to be just so, um, like pretty all one thing in a way. Like there were the French and the English, and that's it. But now we have the whole world coming in, which is really wonderful. But that does mean too that we need to preserve more water so that we have enough for everybody. And then beside that, we do have a lot of industry too in this area of different sorts. There are things like gravel pits that are very expensive in water, to wash all the aggregate. We have, I think, more than one golf course in this region. Those are real, guzzlers when it comes to water. And we all want to be able to share and enjoy this water. And then we have this industry that is the bottled water industry.
Tell us a little bit what's going on. For listeners who haven't heard the previous episode, the first time we had ever interacted, tell us a little bit about this commercial bottling plant.
Yeah, so there is already a commercial water bottling plant in the village of, or the hamlet of Powers Court. It's been in operation for a few decades. We now know that it takes something to the tune of 20 to 25 million liters of water per year from a deep aquifer. We're told that there will be no incidents on our more surface wells that we have in the area, that this aquifer is so deep that there is no direct link between our more surface wells and this deep well. However, if that is the case, and if we also do see that there have been wells suffering, not directly in Powers Court so much. I mean, there have been some surface wells like mine that ran dry, but that's a little bit of a different issue. But there have also been wells in places like Godmanchester, which is a neighboring municipality, that have run dry and have needed, we have seen people need to dig deeper to get to water. So with that context and the fact that, it's not just within Powers Court, but just regionally, there is stress on our aquifers. What we believe at Protect Our Water Source is that we cannot afford an industry such as this to come in and take that deeper reserve of water. Because, what if it comes to the point where one day we're going to need to take from that aquifer too, just for our basic needs or for the agriculture, or to have that strategic reserve for the future generations, for our kids, their kids' kids. We don't know. That's the other thing. We don't know what the future holds. And so there's this thing in Quebec law, in the environmental law, the law on the quality of the environment, that is called the principle of precaution, the precautionary principle. And so I would really like to see this principle applied to this situation. And I think that with that in mind, it would only make sense to say, you know what, this industry in this place, this time, is not welcome anymore. Yeah, and the other thing that I should mention is that we've got this one water bottling plant, and guess what? There's going to apparently be a second one, and we've been trying to fight that from even happening, but they have all of their authorizations and all of their ducks in a row, and they could be breaking ground at any moment, honestly. So we're kind of waiting with bated breath to see what will happen with the BAPE and what will happen with the plant, this new plant that's going to be put in right across the road from the current water bottling plant. So we'll have double trouble. That's where we're at with that.
So like you said, you've been on this since the beginning, or at least since we first discovered that the second commercial bottling plant was semi-announced, discovered, one might say. And so tell us a little bit about your organization, Protect Our Water Source. What are you guys aiming to do, and what are your guys' next steps going forward?
Right. So all throughout the last several months, it's been 6 months of action as a community. We have been asking the Ministry of the Environment to be transparent with us and divulge any and all records related to the permit that's in place for this second water bottling plant. So we would like to see any and all hydrogeological studies that have been done on this area that have been a part of the decision that the Ministry of the Environment gave to give the permit to this company that's wanting to set up shop in Powerscourt now. With that, we've had varying levels of success. I mean, we asked for this from the Ministry of the Environment, and we still have not gotten it. I still hold out hope that it's coming along. They do have to ask the promoters of the project if they're all right with having this divulged. And then, according to what goes on with the promoters, we'll either get full access or we'll get like a partial access with redacted items as per the instructions of the promoters, because they have the right to some form of industrial secret when it comes to their business. So we're waiting for that, but we have gotten a full dossier from the Commission for the Protection of Agricultural Territory in Quebec, and that was the body that had to authorize the permit initially when it was first asked for back in 2001. They had to sort of clear the project because it was going to take place on agricultural land. So that gave us an indication of the baseline scientific data, the hydrogeological data that allowed them to go forward. It gives details about the aquifer itself and where the water is coming from up in the Adirondacks and where it's heading to, as in down towards the St. Lawrence through the valley. So that's been somewhat helpful, but it doesn't paint a picture of what's going on now, a good 21 years later.
It's a long time.
It is a long time, and things change. And as I say, there's not only the population growth, so that puts more pressure on our water reserves, but also the fact of climate change, the indubitable fact that we are seeing such quick changes. You know, that is something that I'm really hoping to see reflected once we do get information from the Ministry of the Environment. Now, okay, so that was all like in the past / ongoing. And now, what do we do that we're trying to seize the moment, this very special moment where the local watershed organization, the Scabrique, has come out and taken this brave step forward and written this letter to the Premier of Quebec and the Environmental Minister. Well, we have been drafting a letter in support of the demand from demand is a little bit strong in English, but in French, it's la demande. So the request, let's say, the request for a BAPE from the Scabrique. So we're supporting them in that work, and we're also putting our little spin on it. You know, the Scabrique is has a more general vision of water protection, and it's fantastic, and we need that. It will cover things like the pollution of water, runoff from agricultural processes, like all the things that have to do with water, and even like the recreational side. I think that they have like a kayak dock somewhere on the Chateauguay that you can go and rent a kayak and enjoy the water. So they do a lot of things to do with water. For us, it's a little bit more pointed. Like our main drive is to stop this particular water bottling plant from going in. And then I think also, you know, what we'd really like to see, given this context, is that the initial water bottling plant also be put to rest. It's a big thing to want. I'm not sure if we'll be able to swing it, but we definitely need to put this out there.
So it sounds like there's a lot of different opinions going around, especially in the public right now. Can you tell us a little bit about where the public discussion is right now?
Right. So there is a bit of anger that I can sense when I read comments under articles relating to this recent news. So the anger is coming from citizens who feel like undoubtedly the government is just going to crack down on them as individuals, and that they're going to get water meters in their houses, and then they're going to have to pay for their water, and they do not necessarily want that. And, you know, that's kind of the line that's been often pushed in these things, where it's sometimes the government has this tendency to look more at what the individual consumption is doing, whether it's like with water or other environmental things. Like, you got to recycle. That's what's going to fix the pollution problem. They're not looking at the root causes of like over consumption being pushed on everybody and the over manufacturing of bullshit. And in this case, the fact that we have industries that are taking way more than their share, in my opinion. That's my opinion. So I think like even this little bit that I saw on the CBC with Daniel Pilon, the president of the Scabrique, where he was being sort of needled by the presenter, the television presenter, in this way, which was to steer that conversation towards, well, what can the individual do when you're at home? Do you flush your toilet after every pee? Like, do you like kind of needling him in that way? When for me, it's like, I don't know if Daniel Pilon got the chance to say his piece about what he thinks about water bottling companies. Like, that's where we could start, maybe, if it's, here's the thing, like there's this thing called the Atlas du bassin versant de la rivière Châteauguay. It's an atlas of our watershed. It dates a bit. It's from 2007, but within that, there's a lot of good information. And at that time, when you look at the graph, like a pie chart of how much water was being used by whom, whether it was industry, agriculture, the water bottling companies, or people like municipalities or just residents on their wells, you see that in the Haut St Laurent, which is in our little part where there was already this Aquaterra water bottling company, it was 12% that was being taken by that company. 12%. So if we add another company and we up that percentage, it might be a little wonky with the numbers since we do also have a bigger population now. And there are other factors, but even let's just say it's 10% that's being taken by the water bottling companies. Well, wouldn't it be nice to just start there, like slash that, and then we get a little bit of breathing room for agriculture and for people? Like,
I would be inclined to agree with you if I were to make a decision as to, if we got to choose a distribution of resources, who should get the water first? The families, the residents of a municipality, or should it go for the profits for a private entity?
That's it.
I know where my opinion lies is that I think water should be shared with my neighbors. It should be shared with my community. It should be shared with organizations that benefit people. One concern I have is that you have an organization who is benefiting from a public resource, water, but those profits are not being shared publicly. Those profits are being shared privately, as it is a private organization. Let's talk a little bit about the privatization of water, because I think water is a very interesting public resource because, you have certain manufactured products where I think you can make an argument that a factory makes a car, and the car, the profits from the car should go to benefit the manufacturer of the car. And, you have more complicated ways of how you distribute money between capital and labor. But you know what? I'm willing to say that if you buy a car, that is a private deal. Water is not necessarily made in a factory. Water was not built by capital.
Yeah, there's a sacredness to water. It is something that, even in the law here in Quebec, it's been enshrined as what they call a chose commune, a common thing. It's not a bien commun, a bien commun. Some people say that it's a bien commun, but bien commun means a piece of property, it's something that belongs to everybody, but whereas chose just means thing. It's like this. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we could play with the language around it for days, and we do. A lot of philosophers do. Those in the sort of ecological philosophy really grapple with how to call water. Like, is it a resource? Is it a reserve of water? Is it like what makes up 92% of our blood plasma? Like, it makes us up. It's 70% of us is water, of our bodies, right? And we're all connected by this thing that carries this latent energy that makes the weather patterns that create the conditions for life on Earth. Like, beyond needing it to drink, so that we don't get dehydrated and die, beyond needing it for watering our gardens or crops, beyond enjoying it in the rivers and streams and lakes and oceans, we are so fully dependent on water and so made of water. So to think of it being channeled, being poured into these plastic bottles and restrained, it almost gives me the heebie-jeebies. Like, it's so wrong to be taking this life-giving force and putting it in these containers that like actually pollute it slowly. We know that the plastics break down and go, like, we get microplastics in bottled water. It's often sold and billed as something that's going to be better for your health, but it isn't always, especially if it's been sitting around in a hot car for a while. Like, so I think for the privatization of water, like to go back to that sort of initial question you asked, because I've been ranting and rambling, I would say that unfortunately we do have a permit system in place in Quebec that allows this form of capital gain on water. And until that changes, we're still going to have water bottling companies profiteering on the water. That is really where we have to move the needle, and that's what we can be asking for. We need these permits to be abolished. We need, there may be a bit of an argument that's possible to make on, okay, well, in the case of a natural disaster or what have you, sometimes bottled water is necessary because if infrastructure crumbles like it's doing right now on the south shore of Montreal, there's a large swath of the population there, like 1.2 million people who are experiencing this fear that like their infrastructure under Atwater is going to break soon because it's old and crumbling and money hasn't been invested in it in a long time. And that would put them out of safe drinking water in their homes. So yeah, they might need some bottled water if that does happen, God forbid. However, do we need a whole big industry around this thing? That I just don't think we do. I think we need to pour some public funds into creating good infrastructure that will definitely always need to be maintained. Like, it's a constant thing. No, but we're never going to be able to sit back on our laurels and say it's done. You have to keep keeping it up. And then we cannot have this conversation without thinking about all the First Nations people who, there's so many communities around the country, and it's so disproportionate, the number of these communities that are under boil water advisories that just don't have access to clean water because theirs has been polluted by mining tailings or whatever else. Like, it's wild when you start looking into it. So I'd put that out there too, that, and those people are dependent on the bottled water, and it's all backwards. It's all backwards.
So, talking about having this permit system where the government is allowing for the capital gain from a public resource, a unique one, such as water, we're talking about having to change that permit system in order to protect the water use for the long term, for longer generations, especially as we're seeing hotter and hotter summers every year. So we're in an interesting time in Quebec. For our listeners who may not know, we do have an upcoming provincial election this year. For non-Canadian, our international listeners who are curious, here in Canada, we have different levels of government. We have our municipal government. That's typically like a mayor with city councilors, and they deal with the things that you touch day to day most. Your recycling, your garbage pickup, anytime there's a water outage, anything like that, that's your municipal. And then we have the provincial here in Quebec, and that's obviously the Quebec government. For listeners who may not know, we had a former premier, Francois Legault. He recently stepped down this year, but his party is still in charge. And so we are having an upcoming provincial election in October. So, Bethany, if you were a person who is concerned about these permitting structures that is provided by the provincial government of Quebec, now would be a good time starting to think about it when you're trying to assess different provincial candidates. If you're making your little checklist of what's important to you this upcoming election, it might be a good time to take a look to see where different parties and different candidates stand. And just to round it off, we also do have federal representation. So here in Canada, our federal representatives are broken up into different ridings. The way that would work is if you would like to put federal pressure to make sure that this sort of long-term water issue is taken seriously. We also do have federal representatives that look after this specific geographic area, which is called a riding.
That's correct. Yes. And ours currently is Claude de Bellefeuille.
Yeah, so let's go through it. Let's start from the bottom and let's work our way up to the big boys in Ottawa. In the municipal area, who are the power players? Who's looking after these issues?
Well, I would go to the website of the MRC Haut St Laurent, like the MRC. It's our regional governance. And there you can find all the mayors of the various municipalities. And I would bet you that same thing could go for any neighboring MRC, any neighboring like regional area. Because I think, hopefully there will be people listening to this podcast who are actually from outside of the Haut St Laurent where we are. If you don't know who your mayor is in your municipality, that's where you start.
Perfect. So listeners, step 1, find out who your mayor is. We will have links to the MRC. So you just plug in your postal code. It's going to let you know.
Yeah, that's right. Perfect. And then after that?
After that, let's move on to provincial. What's going on the provincial level?
Right. So we have currently a representative for our area called Carole Mallette. She is our membre de l'Assemblée nationale, or our member of parliament, but she is stepping down as well. She was part of the CAQ, the François Legault's party. Who knows who will be replacing her come the fall? I think that there might just be one other candidate at the moment. Like, not all of the parties have even announced their candidates. So I would just say keep an eye on like the various parties' web pages, and you will be able to find out what is what.
Just to make a little joke for any American listeners that we may have on the podcast, our dear beloved American listeners, you may be surprised to hear that we have an upcoming election coming up in relatively short time. We are recording this episode in early June. And like I said, we have an election coming up in October. I know our beloved Americans do love to have these very, very long, drawn-out campaigns. This is not in the Canadian nor Quebec tradition. Typically, our campaign, more or less 6 weeks. So it is completely normal that we only have a few candidates announcing right now. Don't worry. This is, how do I say this?
Par for the course. It's par for the course.
Yeah, this is par for the course. So, don't worry. It's going to pick up the closer we get to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll circle back a little later once we have all the candidates announced, and we can do a little discussion on that. I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe we could get some candidates on the podcast.
Now that's a now
Ask
we're talking.
them directly. What are your opinions on water permits?
Oh, that's a fabulous idea. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. You heard it here first, listeners. We're going to become Quebec's #1 Haut St Laurent political podcast just for this particular election.
That's right. You may say that we are dreamers, but we're not the only ones.
And so moving up to the federal level, if folks want to get in touch with our federal representative, who is that?
That is Claude de Bellefeuille. And I hear really great things about her. So yeah, you can get in touch with her. And we're not having another election for a little while. So it's good to foster a good relationship with the person who is already there. And I will say that when we reached out, when Protect Our Water Source did reach out to her, she was quick to respond to us. She was very interested and supportive of our efforts to protect water. But at the same time, it did feel like there was some limitation in terms of the purview that she had to affect any change, when the fact is that the water taking permits are provincial. They're not federal.
Yeah. So for listeners who are a little bit confused about how the division of power work, we have a federal representative who represents the riding in Ottawa. However, she is part of the Bloc Québécois party. And while they have a very keen interest of what is going on with Quebec, the federal and the provincial governments have two very different powers. What Claude is doing is that she is representing our riding on a national stage, but she is not necessarily she has different abilities and different restrictions on her being part of the federal government versus being part of the provincial government.
That's correct.
So, however, we do have quite a number of people we can now contact, and we know how to find them if we are not sure who they are. So, call to action number 1, what are we encouraging people to do, Bethany?
We're encouraging people to write to or to give a call to the various offices of their elected officials at every level of government. And actually, as I said a little earlier, Protect Our Water Source is working on a draft of a letter that would serve as, a model, like a basic model for anybody who wanted to send a letter about this issue but didn't know where to start. I'm not encouraging you to take the letter and just send it slapdash exactly as it is, like make it your own. But this would give you a little, encapsulate the major messages that we want to get through to them. So this letter specifically would be to send directly to the premier, who is currently Christine Fréchette. She's our interim premier until the election. And then also to the Minister of the Environment, Pascal Derry. So that's coming down the pike pretty soon. We'll have that up online. I'm hoping for the end of next week. But you can call, if you're concerned about the future of water in your area, or if you agree with us that bottled water in this form of sort of rampant capitalist profiteering off of the back of something so precious as water, if you think that needs to end, give anybody who's an elected official in your area, give them a little ring. Let them know. It's really important. And there will be, Protect Our Water Sources is working with many different organizations right now to protect water across the nation. And one of them...
Let's give them a shout out.
Yeah.
Let's go top to bottom. Who are you working with, Bethany?
Oh gosh, okay. The list is long and getting longer. Hyper locally, we have Ambioterra, who are lovely folks. They're biologists, so they're looking at the preservation of water from that ecological standpoint of, supporting all life, not just human life. Then we have the MAR, the Mouvement d'Action Régionale en Environnement, a very beautiful collection of folks from all around Quebec. Their numbers are something like 700 people who are members of the MAR. Maybe 20 to 30 show up regularly at meetings, but it's always like a little rotating cast, and then actions happen all around the province. So they've been very supportive. They came out to our protest in March. Great to have them. And then we have Au Secours, which is a Montreal-based, isn't that a great pun? It basically means help, like water, help, or SOS water and it's a pun in French. I'm not doing a good job, not doing it justice, but Au Secours, fantastic organization with a global reach when it comes to water protection. The Centre Québécois du droit de l'environnement, which is the Quebec Center for Environmental Law, they've been helpful. Their lawyers have given us advice along the way. Very grateful to them. Really, really important one too. Leadership for the Ecozoic out of McGill, joint program between McGill and which is a university in Montreal, and the University of Vermont, and they are currently working on a project. They'd like to get some grant funding for a really interesting project called Watersheds for Life. Within that, Protect Our Water Source will be doing its little part. And then I started to go, because I split my time between Toronto and Powers Court. I, when back in Toronto, was starting to hear about different water things going on around here, or in neighboring cities like Hamilton and Guelph. So I started to go to some events and make some new friends and learn from specifically the water watchers. They used to be called the Wellington Water Watchers, and they're the ones who successfully got a Nestle bottling plant shut down. And they have so much amazing knowledge, and they've graciously invited me to sit on a committee to end bottled water, and we'll be launching a new campaign very soon that has a nationwide reach for all of these things that we've been talking about, like ending the privatization of water, encouraging our governments at all levels to improve water infrastructure, to take into account the realities of climate change and all these. There's so many issues that are converging, but especially to end bottled water. Like that just seems to be the easiest thing of all the things that we have to do to protect our water. I think ending bottled water is maybe the very easiest one.
So call to action number 1, we are asking for the end of bottled water and to stop the privatization, financialization, and commercial profiteering of water. So, my dear beloved listeners, that's call to action number 1. Bethany, what are we doing for call to action number 2?
Yeah, we're going to ask for our governments to address the issue of infrastructure. There's a lot of crumbling or even non-existent, in some places, infrastructure out there. So we need better infrastructure for water all across the board.
Look, and here's where we start to talk about the different layers of government. Because when we start talking about infrastructure, this is when the budget is not millions, it can go into the billions. And this is where we start pulling in the big boys from Ottawa. We start getting Mark Carney on the line, and I'm like, hey, you got money for AI, you got money for the military. It's time to start putting money into the infrastructure, please.
Yeah, no kidding. During the tenure of Justin Trudeau, one of his election promises was that he was going to fix the water crisis in First Nations communities. Unfortunately, I can think of, for example, Neskantanga in Northern Ontario. It's a community where they've been under boil water advisories for 30 years as of this year. 30 years of that. It's unacceptable. It's wrong. And it's a violence. So I really think that, if Carney, I don't really know what Carney thinks, but if Carney wants to do right by those people, then that's really where he needs to be starting, not with building data centers that guzzle water and make everything worse.
My personal opinion, and this is just one podcaster's opinion, is that Carney is particularly sensitive to public backlash. I think we've seen a couple times of him back down on certain issues that have sparked the public interest. And I do think that, when you have communities like Montreal South Shore where, you have easily 1 million people feeling, the heat. Here today, we hit 30 degrees. It's 38 degrees Celsius when you factor in the humidity. Like, you need to have that kind of infrastructure to keep people cool, to keep the water running. You need to put the priority into maintaining the safety, the health, and the dignity of people. And so I do think that if Mark Carney wants to show that he does have public health in mind, he does need to put in those infrastructure dollars into places such as Montreal South Shore. We got 1 million people plus, feeling the heat. It's 30 degrees Celsius out here today. We got to get the water going. We got to be able to conserve the water, clean the water, long-term sustainable practices, or we're going to run into some troubles sooner than we would like.
That's so true. And there are things, we talk about sort of the big picture things, and I know earlier I was kind of railing against the idea that this responsibility, this collective responsibility should just be put on, should be put on the individuals and the families and that I still think the corporations should not be getting this sort of special exemption to extract. But I will say that individuals, if we care and we want to, we can actually make a lot of positive changes. We can reduce our usage. When I wash the dishes, I rinse, then turn off the tap, I scrub with the soap, and then I rinse that. So I don't have the tap running the whole time. I bet you it adds up over a year, right? There are other things that I do, like I collect water from my roof in rain barrels to water my garden. It's not that expensive to set up, and it's great. And then, there are tons of examples. We don't have to get into all of them. One more thing that I'll say that's kind of on the fun side and related to gardening is I just recently learned about rain gardens. It's a way to sort of trap the water where it's falling. It's especially useful in places like Hamilton, Ontario, where it's prone to flooding. So what happens there is the water falls on the asphalt or the sidewalk. It goes into the sewer. It runs off down through the sewer system, and it ends up flooding out by Lake Ontario. And then this nasty sewer water goes into the lake, and it pollutes everything. It's really gross. But what can make a huge difference, and there's this organization called Green Venture out there doing this work with people on the ground. They're building these rain gardens, and they're capturing the water where it falls. It goes down into the aquifer under our feet, and it stays out of the sewer system, so it's not running
Amazing.
off. Yeah, it's so cool. And like the numbers of like how much water is actually being saved this way are pretty astonishing. And they're just getting off the ground. Like I think that there's a lot we can do personally and collectively at this like small little level of our little communities. But we also have got to let those in power know that we will not accept this anymore. And with the Water Watchers and the campaign there is going to be a collective day of action, as in like a protest in the fall. And we're hoping that there will be many protests, that people will show up at Parliament Hill and all across the nation in their communities to demand better for water. Yeah.
We will link that in the show notes, listeners. So book it off in your calendars now. We're all going to do a collective protest.
There's no date just yet. There's no date just yet, but we're working on it. So
book off all of fall. It is now announced all of fall is now known as protest fall.
Yeah, no more working. Everybody strike. We're not letting the robots take us over. Okay. I'll get off that train. Let's continue.
You know what you have inspired for me and my husband to set up?
What?
We actually did get the rain barrel as per your recommendation.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
I will say, listeners, for those of you who have been following my journey into gardening, I am very much a beginner level gardener. This is my first time actually having the space and the ability to do things with that space. So we set up the rain barrel. The rain barrel we did pay about $100 for because we did buy it new. The reason that we bought it new is because as kind of young, inexperienced homeowners, we were concerned that if we didn't buy something that was specifically marketed as a rain barrel, we could deal problems with leaks. And because, we're just nervous, it's our first time doing this, we wanted to get that guarantee that, this product, it's meant to hold a lot of water. So paid about $100. We got it set up so one of our gutters just directly flows right into that thing. And like an innocent, naive lamb, I was trying to do the math, and I was like, okay, forecast calls for 0.03 millimeters. Seems reasonable, probably takes about 2 to 3 months for this rain barrel to get full, assuming it's collecting, less than a millimeter per rainfall. What I did not realize is that it's 0.3 millimeter concentrated over your entire roof. And actually, this is a much more efficient method for collecting water than I had at all really been able to predict. I am using that thing I have not turned on my hose because I just keep draining from the water barrel because we get these very intense rainstorms that, again, it's not raining all night, but it rains very intensely for a couple hours. I go out, I check that rain barrel. That rain barrel is full, and I am just draining it with my little watering can all day, just feeding my plants with it. I will say for next year, you did mention that it's better to have it on a platform. This is definitely going to be an upgrade I do next year because right now I'm kind of crouched down like Smeagol looking for the ring in the dirt and being like, yes, my precious water. But definitely I second the recommendation for a rain barrel. You're going to get more water than you're thinking.
Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. And I love the image of you crouching down like Smeagol. Yeah, it is precious. The water is precious. Amazing. I'm so glad that you did that. Good for you guys. I'm so glad that that's working out for you. And just a note on the rain barrels, everybody probably, this is quite obvious, but it might not be. So just make sure that you empty that rain barrel come freezing times, and just check if there's any of the hardware that you need to sort of take out of it and then put it back in the spring when you're using it again, because freezing temperatures can mess with that hardware.
We do get hot summers, but ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, we still get cold winters.
We got it all here in southern Quebec.
All right, Bethany, so before we wrap up this segment, let's get any last thoughts about water and privatization and just what are we feeling about that? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so just one more piece I want to bring in, which is the financialization of water. Now, when you think of something like oil, or even wheat, I mean, these are things that are traded on the stock market. Water, up until very recently, has not been one of those things. However, it is happening already in the United States. There is this NASDAQ water futures business out of California that's happening. So farmers and industries are sort of trading what are called water futures. They're betting on, will there be a droughty year? Will there be a year with lots of rainfall? What will the value of the water be in the future? Oh my goodness. This is so scary, because what that means is that, like anything that becomes a tradable good on the stock market, it becomes a game of supply, demand, and prices go up and prices go down. And people get left out along the way. Water, we cannot go down that path with water. Whereas you can live without oil, you really can't live without water, right? Yeah, it's more complicated than that, but I'll just say if that's something that is piquing your interest, there's lots to learn. And it's something that I think that we really need to have a conversation about to make sure that that does not come to our door here in Quebec. There are those who would financialize water here. There are those who want that to happen, who think that because Quebec has something really wild, like 3% of all the world's fresh water is found just in tiny little Quebec, that it will be a great place to sort of capitalize on that and send that good fresh water out into the world and make tons of money. Some people will say that it's the province of Quebec itself, or the quote unquote nation, like the Quebec nationalists. Some of them do think that that's something that we should look at as a society here in Quebec. I would be very, very careful with that and avoid it at all costs. So that's my piece.
So with those chilling thoughts about the financialization of water and water futures now appearing on that beautiful, beautiful invention, the NASDAQ, let's move on into something that actually is nurturing and warming for the soul. Let's talk about water residencies.
Yeah. All right. So I have, over the course of the past several months, been so blessed, so lucky, so happy, so, amazed to meet a lot of really interesting folks who are out there working to protect water. And some of them are activists, some of them are scientists, some of them are lawyers or professors. Some of them are artists. And I thought it would be really cool to get sort of a cross-section of folks from different fields, these interdisciplinary fields, together, and to have a little residency at my place in Powers Court, which used to be an old stagecoach. And so it has 5 bedrooms. So there's a bit of room. I thought we can just have 5 people, including myself, and we'll get together and spend a weekend that's really consecrated to water protection. And specifically as well, that we would spend a little bit of time each of those days brainstorming ideas for a documentary film on this situation in Powers Court, but also giving voice to water protectors all over Turtle Island, and also giving voice to the water itself. And in the end, we were 3. There was a lovely little team of us, and we became fast friends. Found a lot of common ground. Like we'd never met in person before. Like these were people that that were either a friend of a friend, or so it was a little nerve-wracking to put this out there, but that's how residencies often work. And we did it, and we had the greatest time, and learned a lot from each other. And so it was myself, an artist, and a professor of environmental law. So the perspectives were all very different coming into it, and we all brought some books to share with one another. There was music shared. There were like anything that could sort of feed and nourish the conversation. We also just hung out at the river. We had great weather, so that was really nice. And the artist, Nina, she brought an amazing thing called a hydrophone. And so it's like, imagine a stethoscope for the water. So you pop this little microphone, I guess, into the river, and then you have your headphones on and you can listen to the sound of the river from inside the water. Like it was wild.
Very cool.
Super
We could
cool.
have the river as a guest on the podcast.
Like totally. What is the rivers? It was so amazing.
That's really cool.
Yeah, little experiences like that. And then Alex, the professor of environmental law, he was so generous. He gave me a rundown of what exactly is a Bureau des audiences publiques en environnement, like what is the BAPE process that we were talking about at the beginning of this podcast. So I basically got this private tutoring on like what that looks like from somebody who knew that process very, very well and could explain it inside out. It was the opposite of sitting there on your computer asking questions to chat GPT or generative AI of any sort. Like it was slowed down. It was real. It was visceral. It was everything that I want to live is like that, and not like these ways of being that are pushed on us. So it was a very special time, and I'm very grateful that we had that. And the movie is in progress, still, learning the ropes of this new camera that I've gotten as a tool to do it, and lining up interviews with folks from all different organizations and individuals who do art on the subject of water or with the water, or like there's a lot out there. So it'll be, I think the difficult thing will be paring everything down to a movie length. Gotta keep it somehow contained, but it all wants to flow. So
let me tell you that is my life as a podcast editor.
Yeah. I bet.
Yeah.
Totally.
For listeners who want to know how the sausage is made, I typically try to cap recordings around 1 hour, and I'll usually wind up with between half an hour to 40 minutes of content. So you can imagine those 20 minutes that get cut out. Each one, you're like, man, is this, do I keep this? Do I cut this? It's a lot of decisions going in as an editor.
You're really good at it. I don't know how you do it.
Thank you. That's very sweet.
It's true. She's the best.
We are so excited about the film. If the artist Nina and if the environmental law lawyer Alex would like to be linked, we would be happy to share their links on our show notes. Particularly Nina, if she has an art portfolio that is available online, we would be happy to give her a shout out.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. I will ask them. I'm sure they'll say yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And so this film, so you're the director, the camera operator, the narrator?
Yeah, I think pretty much. I think that there may be some cross-pollination with different ways of doing this. I'm not 100% sure that I'll be the only one holding the camera, but I am planning to mostly be holding the camera. And as for music and things, I mean, kind of still putting out, I have a lot of ideas of who I'd like to approach, and I've approached some, and things have been very positive so far. Everybody's keen, which is wonderful. I'm very grateful for that. But there's still sort of an exploratory vibe to what's happening. And tomorrow I'm going to Hamilton again for a really salient, like timely workshop, which I just learned about yesterday. And it's called Water is Life, Creative Approaches to Activism. And so it's being run by this incredible Mohawk woman named Layla Stats that people may know from her music or from the films that she's made. Yeah, super excited. Her one of her documentaries is about water protection. So to go there and to learn from her at this free workshop, I think will give me lots of ideas. And potentially we will be able to spitball ideas off each other. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. So yeah, it's all
Truly, the
process.
collaboration never ends. We are always learning from each other.
Yeah, we are. We are. And there's so many amazing people in the space of water protection. I just really do admire them all. And it's exciting stuff. They're doing important work, you know?
Amazing. And on the topic of water protection, I hear that your organization, Protect Our Water Source, you have an effort going on to start a well monitoring program. Is that true?
Yeah, so it's just kind of at the idea stage as well. What happened at our most recent municipal council meeting in Hinchinbrook was we brought that idea forward that, hey, if this second water bottling plant is going forward, or even if it weren't to, it might be good to get some baseline data on what's going on with the wells in the area. Are people experiencing issues with their wells, whether it be the quantity or the quality of the water? Can we get some tests done? Can we get some like depths measured and to measure them, to monitor that over time? So that's the good thing was that the municipality seemed amenable to the idea. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be able to get something off the ground soon.
More data and more numbers are always helpful when you are trying to make your case.
Yeah.
Especially to governments.
Yeah.
So best of luck with the well watchers. I also want to talk a little bit about this effort that I hear you have going, testing for pesticides, especially in water across Quebec.
So yes, that is with an organization called Vigilance OGM, or Vigilance GMOs. And then they have this little campaign within their organization, well, a big campaign actually, where they would like to have the water in 30 Quebec municipalities tested. One of those municipalities is Chateauguay. There is this issue where in Quebec, our threshold, like the legal threshold for contaminants in water, is much higher than the WHO, like the World Health Organization, suggests that it should be, and it's much higher than it is in Europe. So not only are we dealing with the threshold being higher, meaning that it's allowed to have more bad stuff in our water, but we're also dealing with the fact that there's underfunding of testing. So not enough testing is going on. So this organization is taking it upon themselves to get those tests done and to hopefully influence legislation in the future against the use of many chemical agents within pesticides.
Amazing. So they're paying for they're paying for the testing?
So their fundraising, it only costs $500 per municipality to have these tests done, and they're complete, like a complete battery of tests.
Amazing. How can people fundraise? How can people contribute to the fundraiser?
They can go online and contribute directly at Vigilance OGM site, so we can definitely link to them.
We will 100% link to them. My dear beloved listeners, $500 per municipality. That is an extremely reasonable goal.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, I want to talk briefly about an organization called Water Watchers in our beloved neighboring province of Ontario. What are they up to these days?
So they're in the midst of launching a new campaign that will be unveiled very soon. The basics of that campaign involve calling for the same things that we're calling for, like the end to the privatization of water, the end to, preventing any financialization of water, the end to bottled water as an industry. And, in a positive sense, they're working to educate folks on the importance of protecting their water from pollutants or overuse. Educating folks on just like how the water cycle actually works and what they can do to preserve and protect water at home. But also, we're not neglecting the fact that like the permit system in Ontario is similar to Quebec. Like that's what needs to change, I think, is this wild permit system where people are able to profiteer off water. So yeah.
It is true that across borders, across cultural differences, it is water that unites us. We all have the same base concerns about making sure that we have water for our families, we have water for our communities, we have water for future generations. Doesn't matter if there's a border in between, we all have the same concerns at the end of the day.
Yeah, we really do. We really do. It is a uniting force. And I think it's important to step back sometimes when you're in this fight and remember that and like really enjoy the water. Like it's summer, everybody, or almost officially summer. Feels like full summer.
It felt like summer today. I hope it doesn't feel like more summer after this.
Yeah, but like go take a dip. Go take a dip and just enjoy and remind yourself of your love for water because it's in all of us.
Absolutely. And lastly, bringing it back home, bringing it back to local issues. I hear that there's a big event happening in Powers Court on Monday.
Yeah, this has all happened so fast. I got a call yesterday from a journalist from La Presse, which reaches about 4 million readers in Quebec. 58% of the population reads La Presse, so it's pretty big. It's pretty cool. He is the one who broke the story about the Scabrique's request for the BAPE, and he would like to talk to protect our water source. And so he's coming to Powers Court on Monday, and community members have been invited to come and meet him. We're going to walk down the road to the plant that exists and the site, which is right across the street from there, where there will be the new plant if it's built. And we're going to share our perspectives on this situation. So you can look out for an article in La Presse very soon, hopefully within the next week or two.
Keep your eyes open, dear listeners. I know you can't get enough of Bethany. I know I can't, so I will be very much looking forward to reading the wonderful article in La Presse coming out to newsstands near you.
Aw, that's really sweet.
I was going to say, is it newsstands? Like, is it online? How do people read magazines these days? I'm going to have to figure that out.
I'm actually ignorant as to how people read La Presse. I read it online, but
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I read it online too, but I didn't know how to say, like, coming soon to a linked website near you.
Coming soon to a virtual kiosk to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So that is a buzz that is happening in and around our community. And now we want to have a special announcement for you creative folk out there, you artistic folk. You know that I am speaking to you. You know it's you. Bethany, what do you have to say to the artists who are listening?
Yeah.
With bated breath.
We need you. So I had this big tree, this big old ash tree that fell in my forest recently in Powers Court. A friend came and chainsawed it up into these big stumps. And then I thought, oh, that'll be great. We can make this into firewood. And then I kind of looked at it again and I was like, you know what? What if it were seats for people in a forest theater and we could have a show? People could come and sit on these stumps all around like toadstools in the forest. And we would have a show in the forest with the sound of the river going by below. And it would be so beautiful. So we're looking to set up sort of a variety show where the theme is water. And to do that sometime this summer, probably August, honestly, probably very end of summer. And so if you dance, if you sing, if you play an instrument, if you make visual art, if you do theater, I mean, whatever it is, or puppets, maybe there's something that you want to contribute to the conversation on water and its protection through your art. And we'd love to have you. So reach out to me. Yeah. I'd love to talk further.
We will have notes on how to reach out to you. Do you have a specific email that you're doing for this project?
You can do it through the Protect Our Water Source website. So it's like contact@protectourwatersource.ca. Yeah, no problem. Just like that.
Perfect. We will have that linked into the show notes. So like Bethany said, all you artists out there, all you theater folk out there, all you beginner stand-up comics out there, get in touch with Bethany. We're going to have a wonderful water-themed show in late August. We'll bring one of those, mesh bodysuits to protect us from the mosquitoes at that time of the year, but we're going to have a good time.
Yeah, you just got to pretend they don't exist. It's really hard though.
Wonderful. So listeners, definitely get in touch with Bethany. It's going to be a good time, whether you are out performing or you have your very own tree stump seat.
Yay! Can't wait.
We've talked a lot of different themes on today's episode. We keep coming back to water and we keep coming back to the privatization. For me, the way that I understand this conflict in our region is that partially, yes, it is ecology, but like so many different facets of our life, it touches on class, it touches on capital interest, it touches on how are profits controlled and how are profits distributed in our society. I have a political philosophy that I believe that public resources that are profited from should be controlled publicly. So I have the belief that if there is a resource that comes from the public, then those profits should be shared with the public. I have a particular concern of a small investor class profiting privately from public resources. And like so many different things in life, it becomes very clear if you look at it as a class conflict in between working people and in between capital. And so if you are able to simplify the conflict in that way of trying to see which side of the line you are on, ask yourself if you are the one profiting from the extraction of water in your community. Ask yourself which side of the line you find yourself, either aligned with capital or aligned with your community. So that's my particular understanding of the water conflict in our region. Bethany, do you have any closing thoughts?
I really couldn't say it much better than what you just said. I think it's exactly the issue. Are you on the side of capital or are you on the side of community? Like, that was really beautiful and succinctly put. So I think we should leave that.
I'll see if I can link up to Pete Seeger on this. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Anyways, listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this very long journey. I know we've talked about so many different topics, but don't worry, everything is going to be linked in the show notes so you can follow along with different organizations that you thought might be cool. Like we said, get in touch with your political representatives on all levels, municipal, provincial, federal. They all have a role in this, as do you, dear listeners. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and we'll be back in your ears very soon.
Yes, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Appreciate it.